everything we know about God is captured within the syllables of him as creator. Whatever he was doing before he began creation, we are not permitted to come into that depth of knowledge. But it's important for us to know that God was before creation began. And there were many engagements that defined the civilization of God in himself before he found it necessary to begin to create other entities to participate in that civilization. And when God decided, on account of his benevolence, to bring other entities that he had to create because there were none anywhere to come into that fellowship, he had threefold agenda: that he will be known. In fact, Jesus was speaking, he said, this is life eternal. That means any being that has the opportunity to participate in existence, what defines the essence of the existence of that being is his knowledge of God. So he said life is not breath, because there are realms where beings don't breathe. It's only mortals that breathe to sustain the life of the soul. And the point comes when you are clothed with your celestial body and you will no longer need breath to survive, because there are realms beyond oxygen. So Jesus said, in case you want to understand life from the zenith of life, he said life is the knowledge of God that you have. And knowledge in this context is the experience, the depth of the experience of God that you have. So one of the things that defines the relevance of creatures that participate in God's civilization is the depth of intimacy that they share with God, the experience of God that they have. And then the second thing that gives value to our creation is the depth of our worship of God. And I tell people, worship is not a song, but you can worship through singing. Because when you study the word worship, the first time it was used in scripture, nobody was singing. In Genesis 22 verse 5, Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac, and he said, I'm going yonder to worship with the young lad. And so if you understand worship, you discover that worship is actually a heart posture of adoration and yieldedness to the dictates of God. And so when a creature comes to a point where he knows God by experience, the natural byproduct of that knowledge is worship. Because now that he has known God, the promptings of God will be awoken in his spirit. And on the strength of that, he will have no choice but to adore him, because the glory and the ecstasy that comes out of God is beyond comprehension. That is why even the elders that live in the throne room, day and night, they fall on their faces. They never get used to him. Because every time you look upon him, you see other dimensions. And so when a man begins to experience God, worship is the natural byproduct. He adores him, and then he falls on his faces. That's a testimony of surrender. Whatever is your desire, that becomes the meaning of my life. And so this is what defines the civilization of God. That creatures know him, they worship him, and then he can entrust them with his will. So they facilitate that will. Because every government has an agenda. The United Kingdom has an agenda. And there are entities that advance that agenda. You know, I'm wearing a suit today not because I love it. I was manipulated to like it. Because when you go back to my forefathers, where we came from, we wear something else other than suit. But aeons before now, the United Kingdom had an agenda to colonize the world and to impart their culture to the world. So the language I'm speaking is not mine. I don't love it, but I have to speak it to communicate. All of this is part of the agenda. So a day will come when the whole population of the world will speak the language of the natives of this land. They will dress like the natives of this land, so that their lives become an expression of the culture of these people. And so they sent a team from one territory to the other. The team they sent is called the ecclesia. So you have somebody who is in charge of the government, somebody who is in charge of the army, somebody who is in charge of the legislative. They co-opt them together and they send them to distant lands, and they tell them, your assignment is simple: make this place a reflection of the UK. So that a king sits here but is in charge of many entities, many realms and many regions. And it's not their fault. That's the agenda of every kingdom. God also wanted to colonize the realms that he created, and so he has an agenda. And so a people that know him, a people that worship him, are now saddled with the responsibility of advancing his will, which is to ensure that the kingdoms of the heavens become the reflections of the kingdoms of the earth. Meanwhile, God will not need to leave his throne to come to the earth, but the agents that he sends will be so skilled in creating what he has created until they make this realm reflect heaven. And before God began to do that with man, angels were the ones doing it. Because there was a prince who was the governor of the earth realm. Because this earth we live in is not the first earth. There was an earth that was destroyed before this earth was created. Because this earth we are living in is actually not a creation, it's a reconstruction. Because if you study Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, the Bible said, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And then in verse 2 it said the earth was void. It said darkness was on the face of the deep. And we understand why the earth became void, because the first governor of the earth violated God, and so the earth was judged. And the way it works is that when an agent who is in charge of a domain is judged, the region is also judged, because the region will naturally be a reflection of the character of the prince that governs the realm. And so when the first earth was judged, if you go to Jeremiah chapter 4 verse 23, you find what I'm talking about. So the earth was void it's not a statement that first appeared in Genesis 1:2. When the earth was judged, when the princes that ruled the first earth were judged, the earth was also judged. And so God came back to reconstruct the earth. So Genesis chapter 1 verse 2 to verse 25 was a reconstruction process. Now that God has reconstructed the earth, he needed a new governor. And this time around, he wouldn't use an angel. And so the council of the Godhead came together, and there was a deliberation. The Father was interacting with the Word, and the Word was interacting with the Spirit, and the Spirit was interacting with the Father. And the summary of that conversation is, we need another governor to rule the earth. And so when they went into the womb of wisdom, what came out was man. And so if you study Genesis 1:26, the Bible said, God said, let us make man in our own image, after our likeness, and let that man have dominion over this visible region that we are reconstructing. And so God sent man here as his agent to advance his will upon the face of the earth.